In the early 1980s, Kawasaki gazed into the future and incorporated a turbocharger. Thus, the GPZ750 Turbo emerged. It was a motorcycle that didn't seek approval. It arrived to astonish you. With 4 cylinders, a turbocharger, and a thrust that struck like a Tyson punch at 6,000 RPMs, it was the inaugural true turbo superbike, and no one was prepared. Today, I shall explain how this formidable machine was 3 decades ahead of its era, and it continues to resemble a high-velocity missile on wheels. The concluding years of the 1970s and the initial years of the 1980s were both an exhilaratingly beautiful and perilous era. Rock music reverberated with great intensity, and the jackets were expertly crafted from authentic leather, and the Japanese factories were at war. But it wasn't a war with tanks. It was a war of RPM, horsepower, and top speed. Honda, Suzuki, Yamaha, and Kawasaki all wanted one thing: to be the fastest in the world. And there was no mercy. We already had monsters like the Honda CBX-1000 with its 6 inline cylinders, the Suzuki Katana, which appeared to be crafted by an eccentric architect with futuristic visions, and the Kawasaki Z, which had already become a legendary icon. But naturally, none of that sufficed, because if one motorcycle achieved a speed of 200 kilometers per hour, the other had to achieve a speed of 220 kilometers per hour, and if one motorcycle possessed 90 horsepower, the other emerged with 95 horsepower and a fairing more aerodynamic than a GP rider's ego. Kawasaki had already experienced success with its GPZ1100, which was akin to a hammer. It was subtle, powerful, and refined, yet not revolutionary. And that's when someone in Akashi, likely after consuming sake and attending numerous meetings, he articulated a proposition that would transform the trajectory of events. Hey, what if, instead of simply enlarging the engine, we integrate a turbocharger? There was a brief moment of silence. Subsequently, the engineers began laboring relentlessly, as if there were no tomorrow, on a 738 cubic centimeter 4-cylinder inline engine. The engine was cooled by air and driven by a Hitachi HTB turbocharger. And as though that wasn't sufficient, they additionally incorporated the digital fuel injection system. This occurred during an era when numerous automobiles were still reliant on dual carburetors. As though they were akin to NASA technology, it was the year 1983, and the world had not yet been introduced to the iconic song Sweet Child O' Mine. However, Kawasaki had already prepared its extraordinary mutant creation, the GPZ750 Turbo, a veritable missile on wheels that delivered an impressive 112 horsepower. And bear in mind, those figures might not appear astonishing today, but back in that era, the majority of large motorcycles were approximately 90 horsepower. This thing would explode when the turbo kicked in. You'd be cruising calmly, humming softly, and suddenly, boom. You felt like Thor himself was pushing you with his hammer. It was Kawasaki's response to a question that no one had the audacity to pose. Is it conceivable to possess a superbike that incorporates space-age technology, possesses an extraordinary amount of power, and boasts the appearance reminiscent of a Klingon vessel? Absolutely, and it was officially designated as the GPZ750 Turbo. The turbo lag of the GPZ750 Turbo was not just any turbo lag. It was legendary, mythical, the kind that was talked about in biker bars like war stories. Imagine this scenario. You're gliding along at a consistent 4,000 RPM, with the engine humming smoothly like a satisfied Japanese feline. Everything feels serene and tranquil. Suddenly, without any forewarning, the turbocharger engages. And there exists no middle ground, no gradual transition. Boom. It's akin to someone delivering a forceful kick to your back with a steel boot. Suddenly, all the horsepower was thrust upon you, leaving you uncertain whether to accelerate further or to start praying in Japanese. The Hitachi HTB, the turbocharger that this formidable machine possessed, was certainly no mere toy. It was designed to deliver maximum pressure starting at 6,500 RPM. And it had no mercy. It gave you half a second to catch your breath and then launched you like a projectile. You experienced the impact, the high-pitched whistle, the swift whoosh, and by the time you managed to respond, you had already surged 50 meters forward, not comprehending what in the world had transpired. Mechanically speaking, the foundational engine was quite similar to that of the GPZ750. It was naturally aspirated with 738 cubic centimeters, 4 cylinders arranged in line, air and oil cooled, but equipped with internal reinforcements to endure extreme conditions. specialized spark plugs, more resilient pistons, adjusted compression ratios, and of course, the digital fuel injection system, which was among the pioneering digital electronic fuel injection systems implemented in production motorcycles. All this to ensure that the turbo wouldn't blow up, although sometimes it would still explode with excitement. The interesting part was that the turbo didn't blow all the time. It was a turbo system on demand, making the experience much more dramatic. Below that point, the motorcycle seemed calm and composed, but once you passed 6,000 RPMs, you entered a whole new dimension, and therein lay the problem. In the city environment, the motorcycle was anxious, unpredictable, and quite capricious. While navigating through traffic, you might have downshifted unintentionally, and suddenly you found yourself almost hitting the bumper of the vehicle in front because the turbo thrust you forward like a runaway mule. On the curves, the situation was not any better. If you applied the throttle at an inopportune moment, the turbocharger would engage and propel you off the line like a watermelon seed in the mouth of a bored child. That's why many gave it well-deserved nicknames. The motorcycle gave you metaphorical wings, without the Red Bull branding or any traction control. The GPZ doesn't just turn, it propels the bike forward like it has a self-destruct mechanism. That mechanism was the throttle. The motorcycle was one that commanded respect. It was not intended for just any rider. You could either chuckle or end up on the ground in an instant. It wasn't the most gentle or the smoothest ride, but once you comprehended it, it was akin to dancing with a dragon. And that dragon would take you soaring through the skies. Let's speak openly and candidly. The GPZ750 Turbo was truly spectacular. On paper, it appeared futuristic, it was a powerhouse, yet it didn't sell well. Why do we get to this point? 1. It was as out of place as anchovy in sushi. The GPZ750 Turbo was priced higher than a GPZR, its non-turbo sibling, but significantly more balanced. And during the 1980s, this was akin to attempting to sell you a digital wristwatch when everyone was merely getting accustomed to the analog Casio. Individuals would examine the specification sheet and exclaim in amazement. However, upon seeing the price, they opted for the R model. It was more affordable, offered greater stability, was more practical, and lacked the constant worry of the turbocharger potentially detonating like a pressure cooker. Maintenance is like caring for a Persian cat on a bike. The turbo wasn't for everyone. It needed top-quality oil, slow warming up and avoiding starting it and instantly going full throttle like crazy. If you switched it off without allowing the turbo to gradually wind down, you would damage it. And fixing that wasn't as simple as replacing a spark plug. It involved diving into intricate engineering during an era when local mechanics would often exclaim, "What on earth is this? A blender on wheels." Furthermore, not all parts stores were adequately equipped to appropriately service a GPZ Turbo. 3. Technology that was exceedingly advanced for its time. It featured digital electronic fuel injection during an era when numerous individuals were still tuning engines by ear and faith alone. Furthermore, with the addition of being turbocharged, the potential problems multiplied significantly if you didn't properly maintain it. Many compared it to a street formula. Great if you know how to handle it, but a disaster if you don't understand it. 4. The competitors also failed. Here's the reality. It wasn't just Kawasaki. Honda's CX500 turbocharged, Suzuki's XN, and Yamaha's XJ650 turbocharged. They each took a considerable gamble with their turbocharged versions. The result? They all eventually crashed and burned. The market wasn't ready. The average user didn't want lag, didn't want turbines or fussing over the engine. They wanted to start the bike and hit the road without fear of something breaking. Furthermore, naturally aspirated motorcycles continued to evolve robustly. They were more affordable, more dependable, and already delivered incredible speeds without complicating your life. 5. The ultimate verdict. Remarkable yet misunderstood. The GPZ Turbo became a casualty of its own forward-thinking futurism. It was undeniably a powerhouse indeed, yet it emerged in a world where individuals still believed that speed was gauged by carburetor and raw muscle, not by sophisticated electronics and positive pressure. The world desired rock and roll, and the GPZ Turbo presented them with synthesizers and Dolby Digital stereo sound. It was excessively advanced, remarkably exotic, and introduced far too soon. In 1985, production of the GPZ750 Turbo ended. Kawasaki moved to the GPZ-R, a global success that laid the groundwork for the famous Ninja series. The GPZ750 Turbo remains a bold experiment, way ahead of its time. It wasn't until 2015, with the arrival of the Kawasaki H, that the Turbo made a comeback in a Japanese production sports motorcycle. And this time it was successful. The GPZ was like that crazy uncle who was talking about the internet back in the 80s. Everyone chuckled. Nowadays he is a millionaire. If you happen to discover a GPZ750 Turbo in excellent condition, purchase it. It is a distinctive machine with a rich history, rarity, character, and an unforgettable roar. The spare components are not available on every street corner, but there exist forums and collectors who diligently maintain them with great affection. It is a cult artifact, a segment of history where the Japanese are poised to break the traditional mold. The GPZ750 Turbo was not flawless, but it was undeniably audacious. It was among those motorcycles that were ahead of their era, that experimented with innovative concepts, that embraced risks, and today serve as a reminder that to create history, one must possess courage.